leaving Kody. They're all gonna come over and sit down outside.
Happy right now. I'm not happy with the situation. It makes it.
I don't know what that looks like. This discussion hasn't happened.
On the outside, the Browns appeared to be any other family smiling in family portraits, celebrating holidays, and discussing their religion and affection as if it were the cornerstone of an invincible dynasty. TLC presented it in just the right package, a contemporary plural household, constructing a life based on principles of devotion, forbearance, and sacrifice. The audience was sucked into the dream, captivated by the strife, but comforted by the truth that, no matter how much of a mess it appeared, harmony always won out. But beneath the glossy finish was another reality. The cracks existed, always faint quarrels, regulations that did not hold water, wives that were less happy than they were insisting they were. And at its center was Kody Brown, the man who introduced himself as a husband struggling to juggle multiple wives, when in truth he was playing a game of manipulation. His charm was undeniable, his oratory compelling, and for years he convinced not only his wives, but also millions of viewers, that his cause was noble, even altruistic. But with every step he took, from how money was spent to the assurances about Coyote Pass land, there was a pattern. It wasn't unity, but power. And though most of the wives remained holding on to the fantasy, Christine began to see the reality. She smiled into the cameras. She played the role of dutiful wife, but secretly she observed, listened, and learned. She was preparing for a move that no one, not even Kody himself, saw coming. Kody's plan was never boisterous, never glaring. It was subtle, multi-layered, and masquerading as leadership. Facially, he talked of balance, of fairness, and being a husband attempting to hold the family together. But underlying those words was a structure founded on control. He controlled with promises, promises of a home in Coyote Pass, promises of security, promises of love equal. But those promises were seldom kept. The land never was divided, the money never open, and love appeared conditional, running strongest to the wife, who most obediently served. Kody also ruled through regulations constantly changing, regulations applying to some but not others. He could be harsh in one area with one wife and lax in the same area with another, causing tension only he could diffuse. And then, of course, there was the emotional manipulation, tearful speeches and speeches full of anger, meant to make the wives question themselves, to keep them second-guessing their value, their commitment, and even their faith. This was the actual game, and it was a game Kody had played for decades. But this is the irony. By thinking himself the master player, Kody didn't know that Christine was observing each action of his with quiet attention. She noticed how the promises didn't translate into action. She observed the habit in the rules, the contradictions in his logic, and the strategic way he framed himself both as the issue and the solution. As the others grappled with feelings of guilt and confusion, Christine saw things clearly. She understood that Kody was no victim of circumstance. He was a strategist, and if he was playing a game, that meant she could too. Quietly, slowly, Christine started getting ready to play, not as another pawn, but as the one piece that could shift the whole board. Christine's awakening did not occur in one sudden moment. Rather, it happened slowly, almost surreptitiously, like the tightening of a knot that one day simply will not move. She initially bore the burden of silence. She remained in her position, raising children, cooking dinners, wearing the smile that plural marriage required. But within, she started putting two and two together, the shattered promises regarding Coyote Pass, the favoritism toward Robin, the loopholes getting more threadbare with each successive year. She realized that love within this family wasn't reciprocal. Suddenly, it was used to get something. Christine understood that Kody's so-called leadership made her lose more often, while Robin's submission appeared to gain more for her. The disparity was irrefutable. Still, Christine did not move too hastily towards rebellion. Rather than instant gratification, she opted for patience. She watched, she listened, and most of all, she disbelieved his lies. Where everyone else saw turmoil, Christine saw patterns. Every financial move, every fit of rage, every manipulation, they all led to one inescapable fact. Kody wasn't defending the family, he was defending himself. That awareness, everything else changed. Christine's allegiance shifted, not to Kody, not even to the dream of plural harmony, but to her own children, her own dignity, and her own future. And in that quiet, defiant shift, the rules of Kody's game started to bend. For the very first time, one of his wives was no longer playing for his approval. Christine was no longer afraid of losing him, because she'd already glimpsed what having him truly meant, and with fear eliminated, strategy was substituted. She was no longer merely surviving. She was getting ready to conquer. Christine's silent observations eventually evolved into intentional actions. She understood Kody's strength was in dictating the narrative. He was perpetually the one explaining, the one dictating what fairness would look like, always the one presenting himself as the misunderstood patriarch. So Christine took the bold step of stopping to argue with his reality. Instead, she started to build her own. When Kody told her she was overreacting, Christine simply restated her truth without budging. When he said she was selfish, she turned the tables on the kids, revealing how his choices harmed them more than they harmed her. Step by step, she took him apart. And here is the beauty. Christine didn't challenge Kody in a manner that let him play the victim. As he had so often done, she cornered him with logic, patience, and consistency instead. Every time Kody attempted to spin the tale, Christine fought back with irrefutable facts, broken promises, unkept commitments, neglect of the emotional needs. The more she remained firm, the further he slipped away. And within that firmness, Christine gained something Kody never anticipated: others' support. Her children could observe her strength, the other wives started acknowledging her bravery, and even the public observing their saga realized that there was a power switch. Kody's grip rested on everyone doing their role in silence, but Christine was writing the script in the moment. What Kody never understood was that Christine's rebellion was not being driven by fury, it was being driven by clarity. And truth is more hazardous to manipulation than anger will ever be. With every move, Christine was demonstrating the world, and Kody, that his game was no longer his to play. Christine's most consequential actions weren't taken behind closed doors. They were taken in broad daylight with a confidence that Kody wasn't expecting. All those years, he'd anticipated defiance in the shape of rage yelling or rebellion that he could write off as emotional. But Christine's courage existed differently. She started to make choices without asking for his permission, choices regarding her children, her money, and eventually, her own death. When Kody brushed off her feelings of being low priority, Christine didn't plead for his attention. She chronicled the disregard in words and actions that couldn't be overlooked. When he wouldn't split Coyote Pass down the middle, Christine simply forged her own way, no longer tethering her future to land that had become nothing more than a negotiating chip. But maybe her most daring thing was emotional detachment. Rather than responding to his theatrics, she pulled back her energy. She broke from feeding into the cycle wherein Kody would play the victim, and she would go into a frantic attempt to fix it. By not playing that part, Christine undermined the game itself. And then the day arrived that turned whispers into thunder. Christine announced, not in anger but with conviction, that she was leaving. It was not an individual choice. It was a public declaration that Kody's dominion had its limits. She was not leaving behind her family. She was freeing herself from a broken system. That one act dispelled the myth of Kody's ironclad power. For the first time, everyone witnessed that the wives were not imprisoned, that departure was available, that liberty was tangible. Christine's bravery set a precedent, and her exit became Kody's most conspicuous loss. Christine's exit wasn't the termination of a marriage, but the destruction of Kody's masterfully constructed kingdom. For years, he had banked on the perception of unity, the picture of one man at the center of a successful plural family. But the day that Christine departed, that picture cracked wide open. The cracks that had long been unseen suddenly became impossible to conceal. The other wives, no longer afraid to speak so loudly, started questioning his authority aloud. Janelle began questioning the same fiscal discrepancies Christine had pointed out. Even Mary, stuck in emotional limbo for so long, could no longer ignore the favoritism and disproportion. The family that had been held together by silence was now coming apart with each conversation. And then there was the world outside. Fans once sympathetic to Kody started viewing him through Christine's eyes. Social media, interviews, and headlines framed him not as the wronged patriarch, but as the destroyer of himself. The narrative that Kody had held on to for years was draining away, and he could not halt it. His efforts to reestablish power only seemed to reveal him more. Every oration on loyalty, every call for deference rang hollow next to the presence of Christine's measured strength. The irony was biting. The unserious woman Kody had counted out so easily was now completely outmaneuvering him, not through violence but through her departure. And the tighter he attempted to rein her in, the more apparent it became. His grip was lost. Christine hadn't only divorced Kody, she had divorced him with a map on how to deconstruct his game. Ultimately, Christine's biggest win wasn't in what she'd taken, it was in what she'd walked away from. By exiting, she reclaimed her dignity, her peace, and her future, while Kody was left grasping the crumbling walls of an empire he could no longer maintain. The game he'd spent years mastering, founded upon control, manipulation, and ever-shifting promises, had been revealed for what it really was. And Christine, the one he had most underestimated, had taken it apart not with fury or vengeance, but with calm patience and the simple audacity to depart. Kody's failure was long in coming, but it was complete. His stump orations, his on-stage breakdowns, his efforts to recreate history, all of them served only to underscore the fact that he had been so completely outmaneuvered. Christine didn't merely beat him at his own game, she redefined the rules altogether. She demonstrated that love cannot be required, loyalty cannot be coerced, and control is nothing when the people you attempt to control value freedom over it. Her choice lit a chain reaction that changed the entire Brown family dynamic and left Kody alone, undermined, and confronted with reality he had managed to avoid for years. Christine's checkmate was not a shouting one, but a stealthy, irrefutable one, the kind that the game is still talking about years after. And as things died down, one thing stood out. Christine did not merely survive Kody's game, she beat him.